Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back again and leaving you with at least one more video before we go back to work on Monday. As you probably noticed, my video production's been down a bit because it's been the holidays. My wife was in town, my family has returned safely to Japan, and we will resume our normal schedule starting next Saturday with these videos coming out on Saturday, our members videos coming out on Sunday, and our live streams usually Friday and Saturday, sometimes Sunday. But till then, let's start with today's news about one of the craziest crimes I heard about. And this was a crime where it was kind of frustrating because my wife had told me a little bit about what had happened because even to her, it was one of the craziest ones she had ever heard of recently happening in Japan. This is 2023 when it happened. And I was trying to find more information on it, and even in different websites and newspapers and online stuff, even the ones where I'd have to like translate the articles, they were very short. They didn't really give me a lot of info, but pretty much this case has completely been closed. And now the people who are being convicted of it are on trial. So I can kind of get deeper into it. I've got more information on it. And just take a seat, grab maybe a snack or a drink, or maybe don't because this isn't really great for that. But you're going to be here for a bit as I explain a lot of what's going on in this. And please realize this is kind of a pretty triggering case if you're opposed to violence. Obviously we all are, but this gets into some violence, some gore, stuff like that. Just be ready for that. Hokkaido, July 2nd, 2023. I'm reading this from the Tokyo Reporter, who I have to say has one of the best coverages of this. I'm going to read it bit by bit, but I'm also going to go into the details I understand and explaining parts of this. The main reason I'm using an article is usually these deal with objective facts, and I want to be respectful when we're dealing with actual victims here, getting the dates right and stuff like that, getting the names right and stuff like that. That's not something I can just do off the cuff. So I need to have a source and make sure I read those dates and names correctly. But I'm also going to expand upon some of the things that are talked about in this. Hokkaido Prefecture Police made a grisly discovery inside of a room of a Love Hotel in Sapporo. If you don't know where Sapporo is, it's in Hokkaido. The decapitated corpse of a man. 3 weeks later, police found the head of the man at Atsubetsu Ward, residence of a family of 3 who were then taken into custody. As the investigation unfolded, the police learned that, and this is the main person involved, Duna Tamura, 30, was the ringleader of the crime. Now, when you hear this, right away you're thinking like a gang leader or like some kind of, syndicate. No. You've got the complete wrong idea if that's the first thing you're thinking. We'll get into it, though. She has been accused of murder, mutilation of a corpse, and other crimes. Duna had met the victim, a 62-year-old cross-dresser, and the Susukino red light district of Sapporo. Her apparent motive was that she engaged in unprotected sex with her a month before. Now, this is kind of strange. They switch between pronouns. It's a 62-year-old cross-dresser who they call he, and then later call it her. I'm going to do my best to use the pronouns they use, but I'm not trying to, dead name or disrespect this person's pronouns. They also call them a cross-dresser and not trans, too. So I'm going by what the Tokyo Reporter has listed. She is alleged to have killed the victim during an S&M session. That's like BDSM. If you don't know what that is, you might have to look that up. I can't really go into description of that here on the channel without getting this video, which is probably already demonetized, more demonetized, session at the hotel by repeatedly using a sharp object on them. That's the best way I can say it. In the neck with a folding knife. After ending them, she decapitated them with a saw or tool. Luna then hid the head in a suitcase and took it to the home that she lives in a car, driven by her father, 60-year-old Osamu, who is a psychiatrist. Now, already you're probably like, wait, if he's a psychiatrist, why is he letting his crazy daughter do this? Oh, we'll get into it. Once home, she peeled off the skin of the head with a blade and removed the eyeballs. She also asked her mother, 61-year-old Hiroko, to film this. Yeah, it gets really weird. Like splatterpunk levels of weird. The trial of Hiroko began this past June. Earlier this month, the fourth hearing was held. As is apparent from what follows via the court proceedings thus far, the case is a sordid tale of revenge, turmoil, and a family that ended in the most extraordinary crime. So let me explain a little bit about this, because already it starts out weird with calling Luna, and this is the main person in the case, Luna, as the ringleader. And you're hearing about her mom and her dad seems to have a pretty good job. Her mom was a simple housewife. So you're wondering, like, what kind of ringleader of a crime group was this? They're not a crime group, but pretty much what they did was the father helped her with the crimes, and the mother was kind of under the control of Luna and the father and went along with it. Luna had already been diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. Other diagnoses too, manic depressant, a bunch of stuff. And the reason she had been diagnosed with this was because her dad was a psychiatrist and had taken her to the hospital he works at, and she got all these diagnoses. And instead of ever getting her any kind of help, taking her to a psychologist, making her take her medication, which she was prescribed medication but decided she didn't want to take it, he would play into her all sorts of demented ideas, her delusions. He would play into them. And when you hear me say that, you're probably wondering, what do you mean he would play into them? Just imagine if every time someone with schizophrenia didn't go on their medication and had psychosis or some kind of psychotic episode, which not every schizophrenic does. And, as we all know, the people who are in the most danger when it comes to mental diagnosis is actually the people with schizophrenia. They're usually attacked the most. They're usually hurt the most. They're not actually people who hurt others. But when you have a father and a family who plays into these ideas, this can really stir up a lot of trouble. And this is what's happened. He would allow her to pretty much run the house. And she would run the house with these crazy ideas. She became obsessed with Harry Potter and would make everybody in her house dress up as Harry Potter characters. And I'm not making any of this up. This is from all different sorts of sources I've heard about online. Kyoto Roboto, Japanalysis, all these different ones looking deeper and deeper into this. This was a mad case. This was an insane case. And again, I want to reiterate, Japan is safe. Japan is a very safe country. But one thing, and I've noted this in the notes of like all these different videos I watched on and all the different research, I said, Japan is safe, lived there 16 plus years. But it seems like when there is a crime there, like a big crime there, it goes from 0 to 100. Like there is no in between. There's no mediocre case of crime. It's either people are ultra safe, nobody's even holding a knife or any kind of weapon whatsoever, to this kind of crime where people are being decapitated by saws and knives. So getting back on topic, Duna, she's reached the age of 30. Her psychosis, her psychotic tendencies, her schizophrenia, every mental disease that she's been diagnosed with, instead of being treated, has been played up by her mother and father, to the point that she even had an imaginary boyfriend that she told her parents existed and made them host a wedding for her and the imaginary boyfriend, where they actually had to use the house for a ceremony where they dressed up in nice clothes and decked the house out really nice, like a wedding hall. And then all kinds of stuff was done to make it appear like a real wedding. Like, can you imagine? Like, your kid has an imaginary friend at, you know, the adult age of like 18 to 20 plus, and they tell you they're going to marry the imaginary friend, and instead of being like, okay, we need to get you to the doctor or the psychologist ASAP, we need to get you diagnosed, we need to see what's going on, you say, yeah, all right, let me just start buying a bunch of wedding decorations and get ready for you to marry this imaginary friend. This is what kind of stuff that they would allow her to play up with. And she also never called them mom and dad. Her mother, Hiroko, or her father, the psychiatrist, she never ever called them mom and dad. She called her father chauffeur or driver. And she called her mother like the maid, pretty much the equivalent to maid, because that's how she would treat them, just like as servants. And, you know, any other normal parent would probably be like, okay, look, first of all, you're not going to call us this in our house. Second of all, we're going to kick you out if you try to treat us like this. And third of all, we need to get you to a rehab center or, some kind of psychiatric center. No, instead they were just like, yes, of course, Duna. Apparently, like, the way they treated her was like a princess. And she would make them call her Princess Duna, pretty much. The equivalent to, obviously rough translation, but pretty much she would make them call her Princess Duna. So let's get back into the article. I only found out about the damage to the head after it was brought to the house. The first hearing of Hiroko, who had been accused of aiding in the abandoning of the corpse and aiding in the mutilation of the corpse, was held on Sapporo District Court in the afternoon of June 4th, according to TBS News. She is said to have allowed Duna to hide the man's head in the home. She is also accused of agreeing to Duna's request that she take video of the head and the mutilation that she allowed to happen. In denying the charge of aiding and abetting the abandonment of a body, she said, I only found out about the damage to the head after it was brought into the house, so it's not true that I allowed it to be hidden. When I found out, it was already in the bathroom. It was so abnormal that I couldn't say anything to my daughter and couldn't blame her. I couldn't accept it, and I couldn't say anything. So this is how deluded the mother Hiroko was at this point. Like, it almost feels like the madness that Duna had spread to her family, and they, by allowing it to be played up and go full blast, almost became, I wouldn't say almost, pretty much became insane themselves. The father allowed her to murder this person, which we're going to get into the murder and why she did it. It doesn't really make much sense, as you might have considered. And then she brought it to the house and made her mother participate in the madness of mutilating part of the corpse. And it feels like they've just been playing along with her so long as far as her schizophrenia that they themselves have, been becoming part of the hysteria, have become, folie en deux, isn't that what it's called? When you start to become just as crazy as the person who's crazy around you. She tearfully denied the charge of aiding in the mutilation. The defense also said that Hiroko was aware that Luna had left the victim's head in the bathroom of their home, but had not made any statement to indicate approval, so no crime was committed. Oh boy. I'll kill everyone. That's the next part of this. At 11 a.m. on October 1st, the fourth hearing of Hiroko was held. During the session, 6 hours of audio recordings of Luna were submitted by her lawyer, after which Osama, whose trial is yet to begin, that's the father, appeared in court as a witness according to STV. In some of the recordings, Luna speaks to her father in English. Okay. She also refers to a person named Cynthia as her sister. So she had like a lot of imaginary friends going on. You're going to hear stuff like this pop up in the story all the time. Just realize it's only 3 people. It's Luna and her mom and dad. That's it. In the recording from October 6th, Luna yells abuse at her father in English, saying things like, I want to kill you, and why don't you follow my orders? So you can hear this is some of the ways she would treat her parents, and they would just be like, oh, sorry, Luna, sorry about that, we'll make sure it gets done. Luna says in Japanese on January 22nd, 2023, I'm going to get a little stronger and kill you guys. That's what I've always thought. My sister and I will kill you. That same day, she says, I'll kill everyone. That's all. Osama responds, please don't kill anyone. Luna adds, you're not even taking responsibility. Just hurry up and do what you're told, you idiot. She says in Japanese, in an apparent reference to the murder victim on June 1st, 2023, The other person thinks that he is at my mercy, so I made him think that, but I am the one in control. She goes on, I thought it would be like a contest of endurance, because I could pretend to be a bitch as far as I could go. But I don't look like that kind of girl, don't you think? Oh boy. So, about what she's talking about, let's get into it. So the person she killed was a man who was a cross-dresser. He was known for dressing up as Lady Gaga. He was a married man with kids, and this was known by his family that he did this. This wasn't like a big deal or anything like this, which I will say is not common in Japan. This is not something that happens often. But apparently this man would cross-dress as Lady Gaga and other, I guess, influential female figures and head out to nightclubs in the middle of Sapporo. And this is where he had met with Duna. Now, apparently these two had met up 2 times, and the second time is when the murder occurred. The first time, he, I guess, took a liking to her and she to him. What the connection was, we may never know because the victim obviously can't tell us, and Luna's ideas don't come to any kind of understandable sense. Let's just put it that way. But for some reason, this man being dressed up as Lady Gaga really got her honed in on this guy. And apparently when they were first seen together, it was because she saw him at the club and just started talking to him about the way he was dressed and that she liked the way he was styled as Lady Gaga. And this led to them wanting to go to a love hotel. Now, if you don't know what a love hotel is, pretty much a hotel to do exactly what the name says, make, And it's not fully understood if anything went down that first time, but apparently there was some sort of sexual encounter. And this is what made her extremely upset, because apparently after that happened, she decided she was angry that he had not used protection when they had gotten intimate. So she decided to trick this man into ending his life. She would tell him that they wanted to meet up again. They should meet up again and do the same thing, go to a love hotel and get intimate once more. And she also told him that she had recently really gotten into BDSM, which is, sadomasochism, subdom type intimate play. I don't have a deep knowledge. You can look this up again. This is something I can't get too deep into, or, we're going to get into all kinds of YouTube restrictions, age restrictions. Won't be able to see the video in multiple countries, etc., etc. Look it up if you don't understand. This is not the channel to be describing that. And the reason she did this was because this is how she was going to restrain him and end his life. So the crazy thing about this is that she experimented first on how to use all of this stuff by first making her mother, a simple housewife, purchase all these BDSM toys and then using them by practicing on her own father. So this family is just like fully far gone, twisted, dark. Like I said, the mental illness that Luna had inside of her was not just on another level. It was on a level that it started to spread to her father, who just let it be played up and become worse and worse and worse. And this is like a real danger that could happen with, any family in any country. This isn't a Japan thing. Although one thing I will point out about Japan is they are kind of behind the times when it comes to diagnosing mental illness. Only in the last couple of years, for example, things like clinical depression, ADHD have been acknowledged as real in Japan. They're like, you know what? I think these might actually be real things. So they are kind of behind the times. They are very 1950s when it comes to mental illness. Like, they still go into this idea of better to hide it and deny it rather than let it be known, in our workplace, in our family, outside of our neighborhood. This is stuff they would never bring up or talk to about colleagues. Oh gosh, I'm dealing a lot with my daughter. She's got schizophrenia and stuff like that. This would just probably never be brought up at work, never be brought up in the neighborhoods. Like, even the people who were interviewed in her neighborhood were like, it's so weird. They were such a nice family and like they always treated her really good. And they always communicated really well. And it's just like, yeah, so nobody had any idea what was going on in this house. And, she's doing things like making her father test out BDSM equipment, making her mother buy this stuff. And also, one of the most disgusting things is that they never got to throw anything away in their house. Apparently, their house was so full of garbage because they were never allowed to touch Duna's things, to the point that they weren't even allowed to touch her trash. So when she would have like a bag of trash, she'd just throw it outside of her room and they could not get rid of it. She literally had everything she had ever like eaten or like any kind of trash she had ever saved inside of the house, piled up to like the ceiling, where the father never even stayed at the house at night. He would sleep at internet cafes, and the mother would sleep on a tiny couch in the living room. She didn't have access to her bedroom anymore because it was filled with Duna's trash. So like we go deep into mental illness, and I mean there's just so many, like we got hoarding, OCD activities. She's got diagnosed schizophrenia, psychosis, paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar, everything that you could have. This girl had it, and it's wild. It's wild to hear the progression of her story. And if you're wondering like how she got through life, like how did she work a job? How did she get through school? Now, she dropped out of school in like 5th grade. Like she didn't even make it through elementary school. And from there, her parents let her stay at home and play up her fantasies. So this is a girl who's now 30 years old and has been allowed to play up wild fantasies in her head that are like completely unbalanced since 5th grade. And even her classmates, like there's people who interviewed her classmates and stuff from 5th grade, and there's stories of her like she never really talked to anyone. And when one person did actually try to talk to her one time and say her hair was pretty, that was the only thing the person said to her, she jumped on them and pulled out an X-Acto knife and held it to their throat and said, "Don't ever talk to me." So there's been psychotic tendencies since an extremely young age. This isn't like, sometimes schizophrenia blooms late in some people. I think, what is it? It can be like 18 to 20 in men and 30 to 35 in women. She's had it since she was a child. This is an extreme case. So she gets this victim to meet her at the Love Hotel a second time. And she's bringing in all this BDSM equipment, and she uses it to tie him up and everything like this. And, he thinks they're going to get intimate again. Well, instead, what she does is take out a bunch of tools from a suitcase to decapitate this person. Apparently, first he died from blood loss, due to stabs, and then eventually had himself decapitated, and they found his body headless and pale in the bathroom, leaning over the toilet, which... this must have been a horrific scene because the first people who found it were the cleaning staff of the Love Hotel, which I can only imagine. Like, in the middle of Sapporo, Hokkaido. Sapporo, Hokkaido is not like ultra crime world. Like, if you heard this happening in Tokyo, you'd be like, okay, that's messed up, but it is Tokyo. It's like the densest, packed, highest urban crime. Well, I think maybe Osaka might have a higher crime rate, but in general, Japan's crime rate's extremely low. Hokkaido's crime rate is just even lower. I mean, it's just, a pretty safe place. Most crimes can't even happen because it gets so cold there, there's nobody out in the street at night. Let's get into it further. Prior to the crime, Duna purchased various equipment, including knives and handcuffs. Osama purchased a suitcase and saw her at her directions. Osama and Duna also practiced S&M together. Now, this is her father and her practicing this together. Just before 11 p.m., after meeting in the club, Duna and the victim went to the Love Hotel. Once inside the hotel, she pretended that they would have a S&M fantasy. After he put on an eye mask and handcuffs, she began filming with a camera. So the reason it was easy to lock her up and get the whole family for this was there's multiple recordings of everything she did. As you heard earlier, she made her mom record mutilations and stuff like this. I mean, you couldn't make a scarier horror movie, a gorier splatterpunk film. I mean, this is like beyond grindhouse levels of disturbing. The thing you need to reflect on most is breaking your promise to me, she said before stabbing the victim to death with a knife. After decapitating him with a saw, she put the head inside a suitcase, which she later packed into Osama, her father's car. He then drove her home. So right now her father and mother are also being persecuted for this crime, of course, as they should. They played along with it. I know some people, I have heard some people complain that like the mother should at least be let go because, you know, she's just a simple housewife who was forced to do this by a psychotic daughter and a father who helped the psychotic daughter. But I mean, you know, she wasn't imprisoned in the house. She could have gone to the police at any point and be like, look, my daughter needs help. All right. It's crazy. It's crazy that people just be like, oh, we got to cut her a break. So right now, this is where we're at. Luna's locked up. You know, she's in jail. Of course, you know, she's definitely too dangerous to be out in public. The mother is the first person on trial. Yes, they are eventually going to try Luna too. But the mother's just finishing up her trial. The jury hasn't come back with a verdict yet, as far as me reading this article. The father's going on trial next, and then finally, Luna's going to be the last one. You know, usually I wouldn't follow a case until the very final aspect of everybody's trial was done. But I mean, there's literally video and audio of this. There's no pleading not guilty. There might be pleading of insanity, of course, because literally this is insane. But this is one of the darkest crimes I have ever had to cover. Anyway, that's my very darkest topic I've probably ever covered on this channel before. And if it's your first time here, please know this isn't the normal stuff I cover on my channel. It's usually international news with Japan, diplomatic, political stuff with Japan. Sometimes crime, but not crimes as dark as this. Stories about people coming to Japan, trying to move to Japan, live in Japan, and social problems you may run into in Japan, or just what life is like here in general. If you're interested in any of that, please consider subscribing if it's your first time here. Thank you so much. Members, thank you so much for all you do for the channel. We've got 3 members videos coming up next week, and I will be back with you talking again, live stream, and one of these videos next week. Until then, have a great rest of your day.